What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel today. Today we have something a little bit different. I haven't done something like this in the past, so please, if you do enjoy this concept, do show me by leaving a like on the video, and of course subscribe if you're new around here. Today we'll be looking into Southampton and how they got on this season, and what is the next steps for improvement. So the rebuild begins. What is next for Southampton? Now I'm going to start off this video by saying, obviously we all know Southampton did not have the best of times in the Premier League this year, but it must be noted that none of the teams that came up had a great season, let's be honest. So before going into the video today, I do want to say that I did actually interview a Southampton fan, and his name is Chef, and all these links can be found in the description down below. I would really appreciate if you lot go and show him some support, because this video would not be possible without him. And yeah, we sort of just had a big chat about Southampton and, you know, what went right, what went wrong, and we're going to go through that today in the video. So, starting things off, what does he aim for, and what do we think realistically is a good expectation for Southampton next season? Now, obviously, you know, we can all sit here and dwell on the past, but realistically, the main focus is for a football club is always what's next. You know that most football clubs, or all successful football clubs, will have like usually they have a short-term plan, which is maybe a year. So what they're going to do in the Prem, they'll have a 3-year plan, which is like, where do we see ourselves in 3 years' time, 5 years, and so on and so forth. And I think that Southampton, they probably, you know, already would have known the likelihood of this season to, you know, to probably descend them into the Championship. So realistically, there is no doubt in my mind that they would have a plan going into this season. And yeah, so speaking to Chef about it, pretty much he said that they should realistically be automatically promoted back into the Premier League next year. However, when we sort of were really just talking about not just Southampton, Championship teams in general, it seems to be such a big divide in the Premier League right now between clubs going up and the actual Premier League teams. Because in my opinion, obviously as a neutral, I believe clubs like West Ham, Wolves have been very bad this season compared to the other Premier League teams, but even them two teams would, you know, go and smash the newly promoted teams. So it's sort of like a weird divide where most seasons before in football you would see, if the team is playing bad, then they're probably going to get relegated. However, in my opinion, I think, although saying that, Wolves obviously turned it around towards the end of the season, but, you know, teams like Wolves, West Ham, not been playing great, but it doesn't really matter because the Championship clubs are just struggling so much to keep up with, I guess, all of the money and the longevity that other clubs have had in the Premier League. And I just think that's just going to continue in the Premier League. I think it's just going to keep creating such a big divide, and you even see the divide now in the Championship between, you know, the top end clubs. You know, I think even the top three right now that are going to get promoted into the Premier League, or it depends on the playoffs, of course, but the points difference is just crazy, and I think you're going to see that this points difference just keep reoccurring, and it'll be very interesting to see how Southampton get on next year. But Chef does believe that they're aiming for automatics, and I personally believe that they definitely can do it if they, you know, make sure that they have their aims and I guess their progression stepping in the right way. So yeah, little quote from him is, pretty much just saying anything other than automatic would be disappointing. However, obviously that day at Wembley was special with Adam Armstrong. We all know what happened, and he said that was great, but he'd rather just get promoted automatically, which is fair enough, right? But yeah, moving on to the squad then, and this is a massive talking point when it comes to just Southampton's season. So Russell Martin, now look, obviously he got them promoted, so, you know, fair play to him for that. But realistically, I think he won one game in the Premier League. And speaking to Chef about it, you know, I did want to get his opinion, because the thing is, as a Cambridge fan, obviously for those of you guys that don't know, Cambridge are in League One. We've got relegated, and that's because we held on to the wrong manager for too long, and he just wasn't good for us. Now, I was speaking to Chef and asking him if this is the same situation with Russell Martin, like what went on with Russell Martin, and he was saying it was actually similar in the sense that they should have got rid of him sooner, but his biggest problem was a little bit different to the Cambridge one. So Russell Martin, he kept pretty much he done what Company did. So Company took Burnley up into the Premier League and tried to play the same style of football that he did in the Championship in the Premier League, and it didn't work. But he just kept doing it, and there was no like versatility. There was no change, and Russell Martin, unfortunately, just didn't learn from his mistakes, which is such a big important thing in football. If it doesn't work, what's the definition of insanity? It's trying something, failing, and then just keep trying to do the same thing and keep failing. So yeah, it's kind of like I think it created a real big divide between owners and the fans, because the fans wanted him gone, the owners weren't letting him go. He stayed too long, and then before you know it, Southampton are in a terrible spot, rock bottom. The morale and squad morale and everything is down. We'll touch upon that a little bit later as we get onto the video. But yeah, just touching upon the points that I've made here, obviously from my discussion with Chef. The squad looked really bad, however, a mix of disconnect between the fan base, ownership, and manager. So obviously it created that divide. A lot of stress and anger due to the Russell Martin situation. And then a quote from Chef was, "I actually feel if we had a proper manager, we may have had a chance to survive, but a very little chance." Which is, completely valid. Because again, as a Cambridge fan, I can definitely relate to that. Because although Gary Monk put us in a very terrible situation this season, I believe we could have stayed up if we didn't keep hold of him for too long, and that is shown with obviously Neil Harris. If we took the results from when Neil Harris took over in League One, we would be 12th. So it's like, I mean, as a fan, I get it. I can relate to Chef when he says stuff like that for sure. So moving on to the bright spots, then not everything has to be negative, and we can take away learning curves and try and improve as a club here at Southampton. And the bright spots, I would say, definitely obviously Ramsdale. We had a great discussion about this one, and yeah, Chef pretty much was saying on some occasions the game could have ended 5-6, 7-0, but because their goalkeeper was so good in Ramsdale, yeah, it just pretty much was a bright spot for them. It was a big reason as to why they didn't lose, some games as bad as they should have. With that being said as well, Kyle Walker-Peters, another one that is loved at Southampton because of all the effort and stuff that he puts into every single game. And I do believe Kyle Walker-Peters only has 3 months left on his contract, so unfortunately, he might be out of the door, and Ramsdale probably going to be linked with other clubs as well, which is obviously a bit unfortunate for Southampton, but that's all part of the rebuild process that they're going to have to do at the club, which happens to every club that gets relegated. And then moving on then, so Mateus Fernandes, obviously such, probably one of their brightest sparks, and that's from a neutral perspective. Obviously from the outside looking in, I think most of us probably know that Mateus Fernandes is probably their best player, and Chef sort of said he was a great player because of the talent he has and the passion he has to win no matter what. So he just loved the amount of drive and passion, and no doubt other Premier League teams probably would have seen that passion, and they'll probably be hungry to snap him up as well, because from the outside looking in, this team didn't look bad as in the sense of like, oh, their right back's bad, or their centre mid's bad, or their goalkeeper's bad. It's more like they're good, but they just don't have the cohesion, they don't stick together. And you know what, after speaking to Chef, it all made sense, with the Russell Martin disconnect from the fans, disconnect to the owners. You could see it almost in the football field. They have like Dibling and other really talented players, but they just don't seem to gel well enough together to get the results that they needed to stay into the league. And then another honourable mention that Chef made sure that I did include in this video was he didn't see enough of Wellington, which is one of their fullbacks, and he said he reminded him of Bertrand, obviously Ryan Bertrand, the fullback that they used to have, running up and down the field, and he says he hopes to see more of him in the future. So that's the obviously I guess the bad thing about managers going in and out and things like that is sometimes the young talent can get missed, which is a bit unfortunate. So moving on to the disappointments then of the campaign, and look, we could sit here all day and list the disappointing matches and things like that and results that didn't go their way, but I thought I would generalise it a bit more rather than going into specific matches, because obviously you can see that everyone can go and look at the table. You can see the results and things like that. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper and really get into the fans' perspective of what went wrong. So Chef actually, and this was a very surprising one, because I think most people from the outside looking in would say, Dibling's probably one of their best players. But from a fan perspective, really interesting, because Chef actually said he was really disappointed with Tyler Dibling because he started the season off fantastic, and we all know what he can do on the ball, dribbling fantastic, ball control, like energy, young, like exactly what you want on the wing, really. But Chef went on to say that the owners, didn't do the right thing, and because they didn't do the right thing, it looked like on the field visibly, Dibling had given up and cost them a few points this season. Chef saying that he has all the potential, really hope that he stays to prove himself to the club and the fans. But realistically, obviously that is a fan coming from a fan. From a neutral perspective, obviously, I don't have any affiliation with Southampton, but I would say he's very likely to move on, which is a bit unfortunate from a Southampton perspective, because you've produced this young talent who looks fresh, exciting, and you've just not been able to utilise him to his maximum potential, which is really frustrating from a fan's perspective, because these types of players only come about once every so often, and when they do come about, you want to try and utilise them as much as you can to propel the club onto the next stages of almost their advancement, their progression and stuff like that. But it looks like Dibling just, maybe it's just a case of bad timing for him and Southampton. So because he's been linked with, I think, pretty much nearly every Premier League club wants him. And now I will say as well, guys, I tried to not talk too much about transfers with Chef, because at time of recording this, of course, no transfers have been confirmed or anything like that. So this, by the time the video does come out, there could be some news that Dibling or some of these players at Ramsdale, whatever, have found a move elsewhere. But as at time of recording, he hasn't moved anywhere or said he's going to move anywhere. But I feel like from a neutral perspective, he's probably likely to end up at perhaps a Manchester United, perhaps a Tottenham that have had a bad season and need like a bit of a bit of spark or something in the attack. But yeah, maybe he gets a better move than that. Who knows? But yeah, another very interesting name that Chef wanted me to mention was Harwood Bellis. And now again, from a neutral perspective, we probably look at the outside looking in Southampton and be like, he's one of the best players, right? Like that's what we would think. But Chef actually said that he needs to learn to sort of accept he's at Southampton and accept that they can't play beautiful, play out from the back, nice passing, Man City-esque football. He said he needs to learn sometimes just a clearance is good enough. And he said he could count up to 6/9 points that him alone has costed them, purely based on purely based on like errors led to goal. Sorry. And yeah, he pretty much is just saying that the fans don't like that he still needs to learn that they don't want to play out from the back. Or again, maybe it might be a manager thing. I think what all of this ultimately boils down to, Tyler Dibling, Harwood Bellis, all these players, I think ultimately it just ties down to morale and cohesion and lack of security in the manager and the ownership and all that. So it's just like, it's almost like from the ground, from the foundations weren't good enough for them to succeed and reach their potential, and I think that's what's created the disappointment in the fans. So moving on then to some more positives. And yeah, Flynn Downs apparently, again, I haven't, I'm not going to sit here and claim to have watched every Southampton game this season. In fact, I think I watched about three, maybe four, not too much. But Chef did say Flynn Downs is actually very good. He was dominant, obviously looking very good in the Championship, and he was looking forward to him dominating the Premier League. But yeah, just poor management choices pretty much led to him not playing, and this could have been a big sort of turning point to players like Dibling. When, let's just say, you're Dibling, from Dibling's perspective, right? You're playing good, you're out on the wing, you're in form, you have your certain opinions on teammates. Say for example, if he knows, okay, Flynn Downs, one of my best, one of the best players that's going to play me through and stuff like that at the club, and then a new manager comes in and drops him, then you're straight away, your head's going to be like, as much as athletes do focus on themselves, they're still going to be like, okay, what is this guy doing? What is this manager doing? Why is he not playing this guy that is so good? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So Chef did sort of say, and the point I really did want to get across was the managers pretty much will be a big reason as to why perhaps players like Harwood Bellis and Tyler Dibling didn't reach their full potential at the club. So yeah, moving on then to the final thoughts to round off the video, and pretty much it's just, yeah, obviously what they're trying to do, rounding things up nicely, is obviously they're trying to restart next year and come straight back up, realistically. And Chef did sort of say his honest thoughts are top two next year, so he's not expecting to win the championship, but at least just get automatics, really. And then, yeah, like I said, we didn't talk too much about transfers because this is being recorded before the transfer window sort of opens and things like that. But he did sort of say he's excited that Adam Armstrong should be back for next season, and we know that he can obviously do it in the Championship, scored some decent goals. And he pretty much, as a general thought for the transfer stuff, like I said, we didn't go crazy into it, but he sort of said whoever leaves, if that's Ramsdale, Dibling, whoever it is, he feels like the system in place is good enough to just all they need to do is pretty much just fill in the gaps wherever they do appear. So, if a midfielder leaves, if a winger leaves, just need to fill in the gaps with, decent enough players. Obviously, make sure that not too many of the good players do leave because they do need to get back up and promoted. But yeah, generally speaking, fill in the gaps where they do appear. So that is my take on Southampton's season this year, and of course, what is coming up, what's on the horizon for them. I do intend on making videos like this in the future, sort of over the summer period, because of course the European season is ended. I wanted to do kind of like more like review type stuff for certain teams. So if you are a fan of a club that you want to tell their story and present it in a video like this, then please do get in contact with me on Twitter. You can see my Twitter just there. Of course, give me a DM, let me know, maybe we can make a little video together like this one. If you did enjoy, remember to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you guys in a future video. Peace.